if you can request to be a speaker, here we go. I'm going to now invite you to co-host. So we normally give Twitter about 10 seconds, and that propagates. So Azad, if you've got to accept it, please accept it now. But you have been invited to be co-host. And then we're going to invite some of the usual people that may have a lot to say and add value. And also we'll try and bring up some people that don't normally get to speak on these things as well. On filling the hole. Okay, so Azad, you are co-host right now, or your speaker invite to co-host. I've invited you to co-host. Okay, excellent. Azad, are we recording?
Yes, we are.
Okay, great. So let's start to bring up some of the people. And maybe we could do some of the usual suspects like crypto loans. I think we got Anthony here. I don't know if he wanted to come up and say something on the mining. And then we can go to some of the questions from people that maybe don't normally get to say stuff.
Okay, let's bring up Celsius Loans.
Hey, thanks, Simon. Thanks for hosting. Yeah, and thanks for throwing it on Periscope so people could watch it on Twitter. That was really helpful. I did see your tax-efficient compliance settlement slide about custody haircut, loans haircut, and earns haircut. Just for consideration, if a loans haircut at $400 million, obviously we know that there's $800 million in collateral. There's $400 million in principal owed. Just for consideration, a loans haircut at $400 million to that $800 million would put it about at a 1-to-1% or 1-to-100% LTV. So people would be paying back the principal to get back the collateral back. So just for consideration, I think there's a lot of ways we can work this. I know you're putting numbers out there, and I would love to see all of the ad hocs come together, the earned, custody, myself, and loans, and members of the cell community, to where we can get something that everyone agrees to. It truly is a creditor's first plan going forward. But if you just don't mind speaking to a loans haircut at $400 million versus the $800 million principal, thanks.
Yeah, great. So I've just also invited Sean up from Salt to be co-host as well. He might want to say something on that. But all I want to say is that next week, let's set up the meeting. I'd love for you to be a part of it. We just need somebody that really can represent the group. We'll bring in the lawyers, and let's figure out the best solution. We know the numbers based upon public information. There's a number of ways of addressing that. I know Sean has spent a lot of time working with all the loan groups, and he's been coming up with some really creative stuff. You probably having those conversations. Those that are going to be most affected by this have let us know very, very clearly what they want. And we've got probably about 3 to 4 ideas of how we could help everyone achieve what they want. And so, yeah, next week we need to make sure that we're all on the same page. You can then express that to all of your interest groups. And if we agree on something that works for everybody in a really nice way, then we have our own solution, and we can, incorporate that into a creditor-led recovery plan. And if we can't get there, then essentially we just have to leave it to the courts. We get the delays, and everybody fights it out, and we get the bids, and then we don't end up benefiting from all the assets. We're going to try our best to do a bit of diplomacy. And you have made your voice very loud and clear. Sean, I don't know if you wanted to say something before we take another question.
Yeah, maybe. Hey, everybody. I did miss the first part of Loan's question, so you'd have to repeat it if you want me to take it.
Hey, Sean, no, it's good. I know we've talked about loans and everything. There's all sorts of ways going forward. Bringing the ad hocs together, everyone sitting down, figuring out a creditor-led depositor first, really a depositor ad hoc that can present solutions to the UCC that really represent everybody and take everyone's unique situation into account. I think going forward is going to be the best way out of this.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I definitely feel pretty optimistic with all of the different working groups and things I've seen. There's an exercise here in creativity, but it feels to be shaping out. There are more than one way to solve this, and it feels like it's heading in the right direction.
Great, thank you. Azar, do you want to bring someone else up? Anthony's here. Did you want to say something about mining, Anthony?
Yeah, no, I just I don't know if you went through all the Stretto documents, Simon, with the mining business, but I was guessing that their purchase of mining equipment, which would have retailed at like 350, I was guessing they got it for about 250, and they actually got it for 247 million, which is pretty much online with what my guesstimations were without even seeing the numbers. But I do like that they have a lot of different facilities. I knew six of them from people that I knew, but basically seeing their document, there's one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight different facilities that they have with machines in them, which are spread out all over the U.S. from Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Kentucky, North Dakota, and there's like four in Georgia specifically that are spread out too. But yeah, it's actually really good. You'd rather not have a bunch of miners at one location just because if something happens with electricity costs or certain things with, state regulators, etc. Having the mining facility spread out is actually a really, really good thing for the business. So it actually better numbers than I thought looking at the how the business was spread out in a sense, that aspect of things.
Okay, cool. I just want to put a few disclaimers out there. This is not tax advice, not investment advice. When you invest in private equity, it can go to zero. If these things aren't well managed, they can you can end up going to zero, and we can end up not filling the hole. However, we're looking at if we can diversify widely enough. Then we get several bets, and one of those bets is there is a bunch of equipment in this mining farm. Anthony, maybe you could talk to some people might be a bit confused where they think, oh well, maybe Bitcoin mining can just pay out a bunch of Bitcoins to fill the hole versus having a private equity investment where that company is maximizing the value of that company, and then we get exposure to that company. Could you help people understand a bit about the difference?
Yeah, correct. So basically mining Bitcoin, of course you're going to mine Bitcoin on a daily basis, but for the size of the hole, you'll never mine enough Bitcoin. So people that think like, oh, we can just turn the Bitcoin mining company into a business that pays us Bitcoin like on a weekly, monthly basis, whatever, like a dividend or something like that, it can never work. What we want to do with the mining business is basically keep the Bitcoin on the balance sheet, use the Bitcoin to pay, of course, cost, paying your employees, expansion, reinvesting, right? Many, many different things that you're going to be doing with it. But you want to keep the additional Bitcoin on the balance sheet, like Mara or Riot does. So it becomes a Bitcoin play for basically an investor, right? Especially for, in the sense, companies that want exposure to Bitcoin, but they can't legally buy Bitcoin, which most pension funds and a lot of different things, they can't legally buy Bitcoin yet because there's not a Bitcoin spot ETF. They'd have to buy something like a trust, like a Grayscale, but they don't really want to do that at the end of the day. So this is a great way to get exposure instead of buying like a micro strategy or some company like that you don't know what they're going to do, right? They could have a new CEO come in and sell all the Bitcoin tomorrow. So it's not really a great play. But with these mining companies, they know what they're doing are they're producing Bitcoin, they're covering their costs, they're expanding the operation, and they're keeping the additional Bitcoin on the balance sheet. And the key here is going public so you get valuation where the business gets multiples. And that's really the key here. So basically just mining Bitcoin and giving it to you, trust me, it'll never work. And of course, with the halving every 4 years, the amount of Bitcoin produced every single day gets cut in half. It's mathematically impossible to do. So the only way you could do this right here, and the way this business becomes very, very valuable, is by going public and the valuation of the business.
Yeah, and that's why if we can buy ourselves enough time by managing this as a venture capital fund, where this is just simply one of the venture capital investments in the fund, then we can make sure that we get this diversified play and give ourselves enough time in order to optimize it. The existing management team may be the perfect people, but it may need a new management team. But we just need time. We can't figure all these stuff out in a condensed period of time where everybody's not getting access to their funds because we're trying to solve an impossible mission that might take us 3 years to figure out the exact optimum strategy, adjusting in a moving environment. And we don't want to bet everything on one play. We want a bunch of plays that could potentially fill the hole, and really grow with the industry. And just assuming, if Bitcoin fails, then obviously we're all going to do badly. But it gets back to kind of where we were. If Bitcoin does really well, then we've got a diversified play that we would assume, if these things are managed well, would all go alongside Bitcoin in terms of valuations, in order to, we've got to compensate for the fact here, the way that I'm thinking is not how to fill my dollar hole, is that I had a bunch of Bitcoin and ETH, but Bitcoin mainly, on Celsius, and I want to be compensated for the opportunity cost that I've got to forego the upside that I believed I would have achieved with Bitcoin with something that potentially could outperform it. And that's why we can't go for the low risk, low return strategy to fill it. We can go for it, which is just sell it to the highest bidder. We need to, from my perspective, what I'd like to vote for is a high risk, high return strategy, but giving people a percentage of what they were entitled to, their funds, so that everything else is trying to fill the hole with gravy on top. And remember, even if the mining business blows up, there are a bunch of machines, these have value. And if all the Bitcoin is on the balance sheet and then the mining operation doesn't go public and ends up in Chapter 11, then it's 100% owned by the fund, if whatever the structure ends up being. And then those Bitcoins can all just be distributed as assets in the end. And it's a pretty simple business, to figure out in terms of, the how the numbers work and whether it's performing. Okay, awesome. Thank you for that.
I just want to say one thing to what you said that I think a lot of people miss. Like, you want to be able to get into an investment, right, that has the potential to do something similar to what Bitcoin can do, or something better. And that's the concept, right? Like, the Bitcoin mining can do a similar ROI, but potentially even a bigger ROI than Bitcoin in the next cycle. And of course, none of that is financial advice by any means. Everything can go to zero. The business could be worth nothing, right? It could fail dramatically, like Simon said, all this stuff. But I think that's the key. Simon just hit it on the head. You want the potential, massive upside. And that's why a lot of people were in crypto, because they saw the types of gains that, are available in the cryptocurrency market. So having a business that can do something similar or even better, that's what we're all looking for.
Awesome. Okay, Azad, should we bring someone else up? Maybe some people we don't normally hear from.
Let's try Taffers. Can you hear us?
Yeah, hey, I can hear you. Firstly, I'd like to say thank you, Simon, for everything you're doing. You're an inspiration, and it's brilliant. So thank you very much. Can
I just comment on that? This really has been a community crowdsourced effort. I can't take credit for all of these ideas. There's so many people that have contributed these ideas. And really, this has been the most, stressful yet incredible experience of my life. There's so much intelligence in this group. There's so many different people that bring different things to the table. And there's no way I would have come up with this if I just didn't spend hundreds or if not thousands of hours in different Twitter spaces, having conversations with different people. And it's been just this incredibly educational experience. So I can't take all credit for it.
For sure, yeah, absolutely. And thanks to everyone else who's contributed in the community. Amazing. I watched your program tonight. I was a little bit confused about the 20% BF Global. My understanding, Celsius don't own 20% of BF Global. So how does that work? How does that get into the venture capital assets? Is it a loan to Celsius, or what happens? Can you expand on that, please?
Yeah, I just wanted to put a placeholder there, whereby if we were to put together a fund structure, and if we were, if we were ever involved in advising the UCC how to run an upcoming bid, we would look for, rather than selling all the assets and benefiting everyone else's shareholders and splitting up all the pieces, what if there is a compliant structure and a company was willing to give that, if it satisfied the valuation of its current shareholders, read between the lines, and there was a competitive process for all that had all the structures to be able to do custody, securities, and lending. We are one of those players. Then that company might want to give a chunk of equity to the fund, in order to, rather than just put those assets to work at somebody else, put those assets to work in a way where all the creditors benefit, because they've also got shares in another company that is putting all those assets to work. So what I try to highlight to you is that there is a win-win-win-win here, and we can use the upcoming auction process in order to probably get a much better result by and even have a competitive process as well. If somebody else wants to engage in that competitive process, then that's what this is about. This is about how do we get the best result for creditors, given the current steps that we're in, and ensure that we get out of Chapter 11 at least knowing what we're doing this year, because there is an upcoming bid process. So let's use that before all of the litigation and all of the examiner investigations takes us to a place where we don't want to be, and drives us accidentally to a Chapter 7, and ensure that this bidding process doesn't end up a bunch of people trying to take all of our assets and benefit for their shareholders. If they want to benefit from our assets, then we need to set the game up where we win so that we can try and fill the hole.
Okay, understood. Thank you kindly.
Thank you, Taffers. Let's bring on Henry.
Hello?
Hello.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hi, Simon. Thank you for doing this. I've been following you from the beginning. So I just want to ask maybe two questions. So some people might not be happy that we're going to be buying the sell with Bitcoin when you convert it, for the bankruptcy pricing. Because there is other plans
let me just
that
get that
people...
clear before we do the question. No one's buying sell. We're burning sell, and giving everyone their pro rata entitlement to Bitcoin and ETH based upon the law, the bankruptcy law. So we can't negotiate bankruptcy law unless you want to try and change bankruptcy law. So we need to operate within how the current bankruptcy code works. And so the proposal that I put together was, how do we ensure that regulators don't claim that we're engaging in securities and the token that's got the insider investigations and that has will set a precedent for something they don't want, so that stops us from so it doesn't accidentally put us into a big delay, regulators filing motions to delay this, and we end up in a situation that we all don't want to be in. That was the reasoning for that, but no one's buying anything. The sell outside the app is nothing to do with us. The sell in the app is to do with the Chapter 11 process. So they all deserve to be treated fairly and compensated with their share of Bitcoin and ETH following the bankruptcy code.
So then on that point, would there be a way to make sure that the management who hold sell won't be the ones that will receive the benefits of the plan?
Yeah, there's a few ways of achieving that. I'm not a lawyer, but you could have all of the claims from insider claims put in the fund, and then the fund could benefit from it, whatever the outcome of that is. Or there may be, we're getting ahead of ourselves because we haven't done the whole clawbacks and funding session. That's a future video. Then they could be engaged in some kind of insider clawback. I believe that there is a creative structure for everyone to receive, what they want, and the process is pretty clear. But what we don't want to do is try and achieve, what some people have lots of different definitions of justice. We don't want to try and delay the process because we're trying to resolve that rather than getting the hell out of Chapter 11 so everyone can enact as fast as possible and have a compelling future if everything goes the way we'd like it to go.
Okay, and one more question, because there is like two other people that are still working on other plans. So I was just wondering, I see Zach here. I've been on his spaces as well. I just wonder, is there good reasoning behind trying to come up with 3 plans separately and then merging them, or working on one big plan and trying to hash out the differences?
I don't really care. It's a bit of a natural process. I don't think that this is chaos. It's a bit like Bitcoin, right? How could you organize the creation of Bitcoin? It was just a bit of chaos that created something beautiful. I think we're in a chaotic process that's going to create something beautiful, and I don't think a Chapter 11 has ever been resolved this way. So if it means that everyone has kind of 3 plans that merge onto one, or if it means that we're just collaborating on one, I think at the end of this, we just got to get to a consensus that everyone can get behind. We can, do the ad hoc committees, negotiations next week. Everyone can figure out what is the thing that we want, and then we can just come forward as one army of the best strategy in order to achieve the best result. And I'm not quite sure how that process is going to work because I've not got any experience, never done anything like this in my life in terms of just being open, transparent about different things. And, this is a first. So I don't think I've got the answer to that.
Okay, let's bring on Taylor.
Hey, thanks for having me up. I'm sure you've thought about this, Simon, but if Bitcoin, do you know how profitable the mining company will be, up until a certain price for Bitcoin? I worded that probably not very good, but at a certain point, if Bitcoin falls below a certain price, do you know where that threshold is?
Yeah, I've got an idea, but just based upon public information, we don't have enough information to make that assessment. So what I would say is don't make that assessment now. Just have one company in a fund that is a mining company, and the goal is to make that mining company, work its hardest to create the most amount of value over the long term. It may require that it needs additional funding as a standalone company. It may require that it needs different management or the same management. We can't make all those decisions right now. All we need to do is figure out whether that company can be treated as a standalone company, put into a fund structure, so that if the company goes bust, then okay, we just got one company that went bust, and it goes through a Chapter 11 process to distribute all those assets at the end of the day, if it went through its own Chapter 11, there's a bunch of mining equipment and there's a bunch of Bitcoin that are in that. And there's a few legal challenges that need to be resolved because there's a bunch of, preference shareholders that are seeing if they can get some of that. And those things need to be resolved, but just put it in the trust, so that these issues can be resolved in a timely fashion, but don't allow that to stop us getting access to our funds and having a compelling future. If we can get our shit together, I actually believe it's very unrealistic, but I actually believe we can reach consensus, go through the bidding process, and have our exact strategy for what we're going to do, so that when we start next year in 2023, we're ready, and we're getting ready for the next halving cycle.
Okay, next speaker is GL.
Oh, thank you so much. And, kudos to you, Simon. I think that was a good video. I liked seeing there's multiple arms in this plan. So should some things go south or not, like what you were just talking about, maybe we can recover. And the only first question that popped into my head, the only reason I raised my hand, and it's the same question the first guy asked about. And even though you answered it, it was about the BF 20% involvement, and you explained it. And if Bank to the Future has some way of wrangling up capital, I get it. Everyone should be compensated. But my only fear is if this is truly community led and it's about the community to recover from this devastating blow, I just sort of feel a lot of people might be cautious. While you need to be compensated as you're a creditor and your depositor, the fear is, will Bank to the Future swoop in and make our equity get more diluted? I'm not making that claim because I can't specifically.
I think there may be a confusion. So you don't want our equity that we're willing to give to this process?
No, that's not what I said. And that's why I started saying everyone should get what they deserve and there should be market value in that process. I just hope it will be really, really clear that as bruised depositors, we just don't want to see more dilution of equity. But then to that point, my other question,
where do you see the dilution? So
there's 20%. Okay, so if 20, right. So maybe you could just clarify what that really meant. So
there's a fund.
Okay.
And we give 20% of our company to that fund, and everyone has access to that fund. So essentially, we're saying we're giving you 20% of our company,
So it's a donation?
so that we can manage these assets through our structure. So you're just essentially the fund, if this were to happen, you're looking for a bidder to come along and say, what's the best equity with the best regulations, with the best management team that they're willing to give our fund in order to be a part of this process, so that we can benefit from them, doing all these businesses, these securities transactions and all that stuff. So it's just a way of giving creditors an additional asset, and that's all we're doing.
So that 20%, if you will, includes the sort of like the mechanism to do the actual compliant transactions for the fund?
So if you watch video 2, I went through, in order to give everyone a home, you need a company that can do custody, securities, and lending. And if you can find a company that can do custody, securities, and lending, then we don't need to go through the auction process of bidding off individually to all different people. And if a regulator can sign off through regulatory due diligence through this process that that entity can perform these businesses, then all the value can remain with the creditors. And we've got another play and another way of, if that company goes public in the future, let's say it's a $200 million shareholding, and that company then goes public for $2 billion in 2 years, then we just filled a big chunk of the hole through that one. It's just an additional asset for the estate, for the fund.
Okay, and that's great. I just assume other people will have that same question, because a little bit I've heard in the community, maybe you have as well, while we like you and I think you're smart and all that, the idea of bringing our messed up company and collaborating or weaving it into Bank to the Future probably isn't what we would want.
You're not. You are allowing a supplier to create markets for these assets and allow all the lenders to have all the people that have loans have a home, all the people that have earn and securities have a home, and then rather than just giving that to the highest bidder, you're flipping it on its head and saying, if you want to benefit from doing business with all of these assets, then give us some equity and put Bank to the Future, BF Global, in a competitive process with others if you want, so that we can ensure as creditors. And if someone comes along and puts together a much better offer, then they'll get my vote as well, because I'm a creditor. I'm the 21st largest creditor, and I want to ensure that I get the best bang for my buck with all these assets in the fund.
Got it. I'm just saying to tell the communication, maybe if it's a little bit more like, hey, I'm Simon, here's my brand, here's what we benefit from, here's how you benefit. Just so because I know a lot of people are bruised and we just sort of feel, we don't want maybe, I think you should be compensated in a fair way. I don't think anyone would discount that.
I don't need to be compensated. I'm just, if I were in this process, I'm volunteering to give some of our equity so that we can become a supplier. And therefore, everybody benefits from all this business going to work.
Great. And using
if somebody
that word
else wants to
volunteer,
compete in that process, then they should give more equity.
Got it. Okay. Well, I'm just saying, I think that's great that you can clarify it, but it's a great thing if you can say, hey, I'm donating, I'm volunteering, because then it kind of takes the sting off any sort of thought in one's head feeling like, what's the tricky maneuver going on here that's going over my head? But I think you clarified it, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gio. Next speaker is Shock.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for the time. Nice 3 days, Simon, to you and your team. Applause. Help me understand something. I'm not even sure how I feel about it yet. But the fact that we've all agreed, and sorry, I have 2 questions here. I'm going to give them to you one at a time if it's okay. We've agreed we have tremendously valuable assets. And, one of the main tenets that Celsius was designed around was this value of inclusivity. I understand, all the equity positions are looking at a 0% take, and the whole belongs to us, not to them. At the same time, are there enough assets here on the table where we can, carve out a portion of the equity as opposed to taking, most or all of it? and leave them in a participatory, like where they're still participating in some way, even if it's based on performance-based, kickers and down the line. But, this idea that we're in line and we get to lay claim if we can maneuver properly, it doesn't sit well with me that people who also supported this organization, especially in early phases, just have a 0% take. And because they're big boys, we don't care about them. I'm not sure that's part of how Celsius was designed.
Yeah, let me try and unpack it. So, okay. So if we have a securities business that can take on retail investors, that's very tricky in the US, but you'd have to get the offering of the fund then approved to be a Reg A plus or Reg CF offering if you want us to raise additional funding. Then people could buy. Actually, there is a way on the secondary market after a 1-year lock-in where non-accredited US investors, if it's done via an ATS, not legal advice, not compliance advice, could buy those assets from people that want to sell. So if somebody says, I don't want to participate in this, and someone else says, I want to participate in this, then they can get a part of it. And that's the whole point of having a securities platform that tries to include as many people as possible. And that's the mission that we've been in for 10 years, which is allowing investors to benefit from all the companies that grew this industry that made Bitcoin and crypto what it is today. And that's exactly what we've been doing for the last decade. So why don't we have a platform where we can include as many people as possible, but we've still got to play within the rules, the regulations and compliance, so that we don't end up in this situation again where we get taken down by regulators in a hostile environment with cease and desist orders.
So it's not too generous to figure out a way for them to continue to participate, in your mind. Generous is probably not the right word.
As long as you have markets, then those that don't want to be a part of it can be matched up with those that do want to be a part of it. And that's the free market.
Okay. Hey, so here's the second part. Yeah, I'm still thinking about that. Thanks for your thoughts on it. With relation to these ad hoc groups, I agree with you. I think they're part of this natural process. At the same time, to the extent that they play out their role in court, rather than just in terms of working with the entire community to shape a plan that they would agree with, do you think that's detrimental in terms of the timing and the complexity of the case to the extent that we play this out in court instead of in our own arenas?
I think if I were starting this process from scratch, I would have done things a lot differently. I think other people would have done things a lot differently. And I know in my mind, once we've done with this process, we'll know exactly how to do it next time. The reality is we entered into this process and none of us had a clue what was going on. We've been on this emotional roller coaster. We've been, engaging lawyers, not engaging lawyers, figuring out who's bad, who's good. We've been going around and around in circles to put together this collective intelligence of where we are today. So I think we just say, let's give diplomacy a try next week. There are natural leaders that have emerged to represent those groups. Let's all get together. Let's get the lawyers in the room. Now we understand that there is a unified plan. Let's see if we can settle that. Let's see if we can find something that works for everybody. And if people have acted in certain ways or done things in certain ways or acted for their own self-interest, just know it's a natural process of the free market. It's called prisoner's dilemma. But if prisoner's dilemma wins, it means that we all get the worst result for all. So let's make sure that doesn't happen. And if we can't make diplomacy win and innovation win, which I think we can, then let those things settle in court. But we need to have our recovery plan for the creditors, by creditors, so that whatever happens next, we're ready to adjust and we're just not caught off guard.
Yeah, I'd encourage us to find that language, amongst ourselves and not have the court involved, because I know it has to add time. One way or another, it has to add time.
Thank you, Chuck.
I think we started 10 minutes late, right, Azad? So we've got about 25 minutes, I think.
Yep. So we'll wrap up about at 10 past 9. Let's bring on Ren.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hello.
Hello,
Hi, can you hear me?
we can.
Yes, okay, good. Thanks everyone for your time. I have a question. How would the non-accredited investors be made whole again if filling the hole involves securities?
I'll cover that on tomorrow. Tomorrow, I'm going to be going through exactly what we believe, without giving legal advice or compliance advice, what accredited investors can do, what non-accredited investors can do, what non-US high net worth investors can do, and what high net worth investors can do. I believe that using both the bankruptcy process and securities laws, everybody should be able to get entitlement to their upside. Now, whether they can actually become a customer in the future is based upon securing additional processes and additional licenses. But at the very minimum, and I'll present it tomorrow in tomorrow's video, I believe every non-accredited, every creditor, there is a way using these processes that we've been working on to benefit from the exact structure that we shared today.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Ren. Let's bring on Letter Empress.
Hello. I have a question. If you could clarify the bidding process, is it necessary that we would have to go into a bidding process if the plan that is proposed is accepted? And if there is a bidding process, what is the process and what is the strategy that you're thinking for us to, have the best outcome?
So Celsius has put together a bidding process, and they have exclusivity. So if a reorganization plan was submitted by Celsius, then that they could also simultaneously run a bidding process, but Celsius haven't done that. So Celsius seem to be, they've put out this process, and that will be approved in court, the process. And so the only people that can change that is Celsius, because they have exclusivity. And so they've outlined their proposed process for people bidding on the assets. And I think the best outcome, again, I can't say best because that's investment advice. But if I were voting for an outcome, I would try and find a company that can engage in that bidding process with a commitment to implement the creditor-led plan. Then I think we enter into the fastest way of getting everyone what they want as fast as possible.
Thank you. Okay, next speaker, let's bring on Harry.
Hello. Hi, guys. Hi, Simon. How you doing again? Okay, so I have 4 parts. We're going to go one by one through these. Your fund that you are going to create, right?
No, I'm not going to create it. I'm suggesting if I were putting together a creditor-led plan, I would want to see some company put together a fund if they're gonna win the bid, or they're going to put together a reorg. I'd want them to create a fund for creditors.
Okay, and within that fund, you're going to put the mining, loans, whatever, the assets that Celsius has into that fund, correct?
Yeah, so I'd want whoever creates that fund and put them into that fund so that creditors get full benefit from all those assets.
Okay, and based on this, and this fund gets put onto the market with all the SEC regulations, so on and so forth, at what point do the creditors, us, obviously if it sells, if it does an IPO within 2 years and it sells, and it raises, like you said, possibly
let me
$2
stop
billion.
you there, just because before you go down another path, the fund itself probably doesn't need to IPO. The fund itself
holds a bunch of assets, and those assets could be private equity or a venture capital company. One of those could be a mining company, and that mining company could go public. And if it goes public, the fund would receive all of the proceeds from that company going public that it could then distribute to everybody that has a beneficial interest from that. So the fund is just a vehicle for ensuring that you gain exposure to all those assets. And if those assets mature, like a company goes public, which is essentially how I made most of my money, then that's what we did at Bank to the Future. When we invest in a company like Coinbase, they go public, and we end up with shares that are worth $100 billion, and we get all the benefit from that.
Okay. And the 20% that you're willing to donate, is this the 20% you're going to donate into this fund?
I would suggest, if I was running a bidding process, I would want, rather than accepting bids from those that want to buy assets, I'd accept bids from those that want to contribute the most amount of equity with the best management teams, with the regulatory compliance in a competitive process to the fund, so that creditors can benefit from any business that happens within that company.
So what's in it for you?
I'm a creditor, and I want to make my
but you're accredited regardless of this 20% equity donation.
I'm a creditor, yeah. So, but if we can't find a company that can put all these assets to work, then we don't get to find a home for everybody. And if we don't get to find a home for everybody, we end up in a bid process where everyone tries to bid on all the different parts. And then you end up with everyone fighting each other, because if someone bids on all the loans and it has to come with the collateral, then the earn people all get pissed off. And you end up in a circle that may end up with the result that none of us want. And if you can't do it in a compliant way and demonstrate compliance, then you might end up in a process that none of us want.
Well, there's two rubs here, and there's the third part of this is that you actually do have a company that could possibly take this. He's right on stage. He's right up there, Sean from Salts, because he does lending and loans, so he understands that. He has licenses that could help do this.
Yeah, full disclosure, just in case anyone's listening in that doesn't know the background. BF Global and which is the parent company of Bank to the Future, is currently in a letter of intent with Salt in order to engage in a transaction, and we made a public statement about that.
Yeah, I'm fully aware, but Salt in itself, right, by itself, can actually make this happen. They're in the loaning lending business. Celsius is a loaning lending company. There's several little tweaks that needs to happen.
How do you do?
The exchange, right? It's
now, how do you do earn, and how do you distribute shares to 300 to 600,000 people?
Well, this is where this is literally the mechanism in which that has to be found out. But Salt could easily, they're in this industry that the same as Celsius was.
Yeah, so Salt can solve the loan piece. How do you solve the earn piece?
Well, the earn piece that's what needs to be, again, addressed. There are multiple ways, I believe, through loans in itself. And if they acquire the assets, and I quote, whether it's the mining, whether it's the custodial aspect of it, if they end up doing staking, if they end up doing an exchange type ask, then you have literally a smaller version right now of Celsius, but the exact same platform with licenses.
Okay, so I guess what you're saying is we'd like to engage in a competitive process for any companies that think they can do securities and lending and custody, to engage in this process, and we put them in a competitive process to give creditors the most they can give. And if you would like Salt on their own to engage in that process, then they need to make that decision about whether they can engage in that process.
Well, it's not that, Simon. At the end of the day, regardless of which way this goes down, some customers are going to stay, as you can clearly agree to. Some of us are going to leave. Some of us are going to wait it out and see what happens. Either way, the ones who are leaving, or the ones who are on that 50-50 mark, and this is why
Currently,
I asked you,
sorry, we're on, ahead of ourselves. So creating compelling future and encouraging people to stay. We're trying to just stay on the one topic of how do you structure something that can fill the hole.
Well, yeah.
So that's what we're trying to not to go around in circles of future topics.
Simon, I'm not going to run in circles. It's basically, if you're willing to give up 20% equity of your company into this, I'm asking you what's in it for you. And you brought up the point that, hey, this will be a way that people can go into this process coming out of Chapter 11 bankruptcy. And you said at a company, I'm giving you that there's one actually on the stage that can do this. And the ones of us who choose to stay will stay. The ones who choose to leave, they can try out SALT. So
You're talking about lending. You're not talking about the entire. So if you watch video 2, we said that these are the 3 different types of services that you could offer if you wanted to create the ability for everybody to have all these services and for everyone to have a home. What you're saying is that What you're saying is, if you want to do earn just to accredited US investors and nobody else, then there is a structure whereby we could end up with somebody else that bids for that equity or offers that equity. And so you're looking for the best equity that allows everybody to benefit from all of the services that someone is willing to contribute to the fund, so that everybody can get the highest return recovery.
100%. Everything that you just said is exactly what we all want. I'm asking you specifically, you're already a creditor, you're already an equity holder within Celsius. What's in it for you to offer your 20% equity of Bank to the Future in this?
So what's Bank to the Future? Okay, no, great. Okay, no, I mean, let's bring it out. So what's Bank to the Future's business model?
Your business model is, well, what you've stated, it may have changed since I last spoke to you. From what you stated was the kind of Bitcoin, Ethereum, online. You don't like to use the word bank, but in essence, bank.
Bank to the Future's business model is offering securities to investors, and if they make returns on those investments, then we earn fees off of distributing returns and allowing people to buy and sell those assets. So if you put several billion into Bank to the Future, we think we can persuade our shareholders that it's worth giving away a chunk of our equity and put us in a competitive process with a bunch of other companies that might be willing to do the same.
Right. So what's in it for you is what?
Fees.
The fees.
We're in
That's all I wanted to know.
asset under management, under administration business. The more assets we have at Bank to the Future, the more ability for us to distribute returns when those assets mature. We made at Bank to the Future, our business is allowing people to invest in assets, and if those companies exit and make returns, we get a fee. So we're a diversified play on the whole industry, where if Coinbase goes public, we distribute those returns to our investors and we receive a fee.
Got it.
That's our business.
Right, and the 300 to 600,000 KYC customers valued between $1,500 to $2,000 is what, just icing on the cake?
Exactly. No, if we get 300,000 users that hold assets on our platform, then we have grown our business.
Right, considerably, correct, sir?
Yes, we've got 150,000 investors right now, and so if adding 300,000,
that's 200%.
makes us a lot more assets under administration.
Yeah.
And by offering those services, if those assets mature, then we receive fees, and we're creating with SALT a securities product so that you can offer earn, and a lending product so that you can offer lending, and combining those businesses with custody, so that you can essentially offer everything that everyone thought Celsius could do, but we ended up in cease and desist orders because
Yeah,
they
yeah.
there.
Right. So
we're just
and
trying to
my
create what everyone originally came for.
right, and my final point on this.
Oops. But it's not oops, actually. Sorry, we do have 10 minutes remaining. I'd like to actually get just a couple more people who've been waiting
Yeah, sure.
with us. So, but yeah, let's try and stick to the topic. I'll try and do better in terms of just allowing people at least 2
Well,
questions.
I think that was the crux of the topic.
Yeah.
People want to know why would someone offer equity?
Yeah.
And why would they do that? And I think now people understand, hopefully.
Yeah, no, I think those were great questions, great answers. Okay, let's bring on Alexander.
Hey, community, can you hear me? Sorry, I'm in the car. So, Simon, first of all, thank you for hosting the space and respect what you've done so far. I want to let the community know that the download functionality and the Strato, where you put your email in to get actually all your coins overview, is working to my knowledge. I checked it for myself and for 3 other people. So there the balances were correct. So I think even when there was commingling of funds, right, you say it, and then the data tracking is correct. And here are my questions. So I still think you want to consolidate, right, in Bitcoin and Ethereum. And I also understand why it makes, from a regular perspective, most sense, because it's really regulatory neutrality. So my question would be, just because now coming to the question for filling the hole, how much would we hurt ourselves when we at least do not transfer the assets where Celsius has strategic investments with other projects? I know we run the risk with the securities, but I mean, a strategic partnership is a strategic partnership, right? So this would even hurt also other players in the space, and they would not like to do business with us. Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't actually get the question. Sorry. Could you say it again?
So is there a way for us to keep at least the assets which when we really consolidate everything in Bitcoin and Ethereum, not to consolidate the assets where we have strategic partnerships, what we said with 1inch or with
I don't I don't know a way of not I don't know a way of getting out of Chapter 11 and meeting the bankruptcy code other than what I propose. But if people have got other proposals of how to, the fact that there are lots of different coins that have lost different balances, you got to figure out a way of how you treat everyone equally. And that's the challenge. And so I just put together what I would do. And then if people have other ideas, then they can put forward that. And I gave all the reasons why I would do that in order to get us out of Chapter 11 as fast as possible.
Okay, let's bring on Kappa. We've got 5 minutes remaining.
Thank you, Hazard, for bringing me up. And thank you, Simon, for all your efforts. Really appreciate your fastidiousness to regulatory compliance. Just have a few time-related questions. First, will the remaining 4 YouTube spaces continue through the weekend, wrapping up on Sunday, or will you pause Friday and finish up on Tuesday? Second,
I'll just answer that one at a time.
okay.
It's actually dependent upon some partners and advisors that I'm trying to get to do those, and we haven't got a confirmation, and there's some conflicts that might cause delays there. So I haven't got the answer to you yet, but Azad's working busy on trying to see if we can pull what we want off. So I have to leave that as a bit of a surprise for now. But we will be going up until Friday. So
Okay.
we've got 2 more we'll definitely be doing.
Okay, excellent. At the conclusion of the YouTube Spaces series, can you give us a general timeline of the key deliverables and consultation or collaboration negotiation with the ad hoc groups and the general or the greater community at large, culminating with a vote?
Yeah, so some of the key things that are happening right now is we're currently in exclusivity, so only Celsius can launch a recovery plan. and if anyone else sends a recovery plan and goes to Celsius, they would send you most likely to the investment bank, and the investment bank would then tell you to engage in the bidding process. The bidding process, I think it goes to court hearing in terms of finalizing the process either this week or next week. I can't quite remember. Sorry if I haven't got the dates in my mind. And then that will have a timeline that goes on until the end of November for getting to a conclusion of that bidding process. And then my understanding, not legal advice, is that it would then go through some kind of voting process. There may be an opportunity for the UCC in order to go back and forth. And every time I speak to lawyers, they give me a slightly different answer on this part. And I've really tried to get clarity, but I get a different answer every time. And it seems like it's because there's lots of different case studies around that. So this goes on probably until the end of the year. And then that process of getting signed off in court would most likely take, 30 to 60 days. There'd be a whole process of putting together a really, public level file of disclosure. And then hopefully, if we can get through this process, maybe in March, April, you might be able to get access to your funds in custody, depending on what the outcome of that process is. Or you would be, on another platform. It's that's the process from here. And those are the key things.
Okay, we got 2 minutes remaining. Did you want to have a closing statement, Simon? Before you do, I just wanted to give a shout out to all the sort of creatives out there. I think we are certainly, I'll quote you, Simon, this is something that's never been done before. It is a very historic moment that we're all in. And I think we need all the brains, the talents, everyone is coming together. This is definitely an amazing moment that we're in. So I'm calling out to, obviously I work in the marketing side of things as well, but would love to have some talented marketing geniuses out there. We see a lot of stuff that's going on out there on the social media world. People just, things going viral like crazy. And if I'm correct in saying, there's a lot of, creditors, a lot of people who don't know or are not being involved in this whole process right now, but would love to. We need that message being sent out there. So any of you guys who are marketing geniuses, whatever talent that you guys have, please reach out to me. My email, am I allowed to announce that, Simon?
Just DM you on Twitter or something. Yeah, you can.
Yeah, I'd say DM me on Twitter and reach out to me, and that would be great. Closing statement, Simon.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so I hope you can appreciate how uncomfortable it is to be involved in this transparent process at the same time as trying to respect some of the restrictions, some of the traditional processes. It has been one heck of a journey, and trying to navigate this successfully to the point where we have all been, hurt. We have all been through this process, and we are really finally reaching a stage where we are ready to determine the future of what happens. Now, while for some people, if I end up walking away from this process and I end up getting 50% haircut and someone else bids, I'll be really, really upset. But it's really just, I'll just get back on with my life, back to Bank to the Future, back to writing my book, things that I was doing before this. But there are a lot of people out there where that is not the case. There are people where if we get this wrong, their homes could end up in a disastrous situation because of their personal circumstances. There are people out there who are, literally have their whole retirement on the outcome of this process. There are people out there who, are really dependent upon the outcome of this process. And so, if you know, this is a once in a lifetime, I feel, crazy event. And whatever we end up doing, if we end up getting the process that works best for creditors, collectively through our crowdsourced intelligence and bringing our best ideas to the table, I think that this is going to set the standard for how things are done in the future. And if we end up with an asset like a Bitcoin mining company that ends back in Chapter 11, wouldn't it be awesome if we know exactly what the process is? We just get on with the process rather than spending 4 months going around in circles because none of us understood the process. So here's my closing comments to everybody. I believe that everybody that has been involved in this process is probably a group of the most educated people in investing, in crypto, in business, as a result of experiencing the difference between secured creditors, unsecured creditors, equity, funds, tokens, securities, all the things that we've been through. And really, at the end of this process, we're going to have a bunch of people that know things that they would never have known before as a result of this. So I encourage everybody to treat this as an education, whatever the outcome is. But I also encourage everybody to understand the severity that this has on people's lives. So bring what you got to the table. There are steering groups. I'm just putting this content out there. It may not be perfect. It may not be right, but tweak it, put together the creditor-led recovery plan, and we could end up in a situation where the shareholders that try to bid on these assets don't benefit from it, because at the end of the day, we all invested in a fund, and now let's get back to what we did in the first place, but put the compliance and regulations and disclosures and suitability so that we can just really build on that compelling future that we originally all bought into. And we're now unified around what could be a compromise or a creditor-led plan. Next week, we'll make sure that we try and progress some diplomacy with the different groups. And so we'll continue to update. And tomorrow, I think, I can't remember what we're doing. I think it's about profiting from everything together. And I hope you enjoy this process. And I hope we're starting to actually reach the stage where there is actually something really, really important to fight for, and that is unifying around a common vision where everybody gets what they came for and a whole lot more. If we can do that, and if we don't, we just end up with what we got back, and this process again, knowing exactly what the process is, and one heck of a financial education that hopefully you use in order to change your financial circumstance in the year ahead. So always remember, you're alive at one of the most interesting time in financial history. Some are going to get hurt, some are going to do really well. I want to make sure that we put together a creditor-led plan collectively where we all get on the right side of this change. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.